I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. I see lots of parents in the audience and teachers and some students. We have community members here. I want to thank our law enforcement partners, other community partners. I really appreciate you being here. We know it's a beautiful sunny day in Summit County. It's hard to come indoors on these days, but thank you. This is a really important topic and something that we wanted to make sure that we had some time with all of you really face to face. So thank you for taking the time, and we know that you'll be out there after tonight helping us to spread the word. And of course, I don't think this will be the last time that we have a need for this kind of communication. We should get together as often as we need to and want to make sure that we're all on the same page and moving forward together. So I just really want to thank all of our community partners, all of our parents, our teachers, our leaders in the district. I want to thank Julie McCluskey, who is going to be one of our presenters tonight, as well as Travis Avery and Jamie Fitzsimons. So thank you to all of them. Let's give them a round of applause. So I think the big message here tonight really is that there is nothing more important than the safety of our students, of our families, of our staff, of our schools, and of our community, because the schools are part of our community. So number one, the safety of all of you, your children, everybody you care about and come in contact with every single day is the most important thing. So, today is really about creating that, how do we create a community of safety so that we all do this together, because we really do need your help. So we're going to focus on a couple of things. I want to share a couple of things about our practice, and then Travis, Julie, Jamie will be getting into more detail. Also at the end, I want to, before I forget, please fill out, there's some little sheets. We'll make sure we come around with more, but we'll have a little time for question and answer. So we'd love to have you participate, ask your questions, your comments, things like that that will help us as we move forward. One of the things that's really important to know is that we do a lot of training and practice, and I think one of the things we found out in the recent incidents is that practice really does pay off. We had students that were very well informed and were really responsive and did the right thing. I would tell you, staff was amazing and just jumped in there and really were responsive. So that's we do staff training. We have safety teams at every school. We rely on some state agencies that come in and do training for us around threat assessments. We also do monthly drills. Some of your kids have been out, I know, in sub-freezing weather, out on fire drills, and they said they wouldn't even let me take my coat. But what we know is that having those drills and having that be more of a muscle memory kind of thing does help us when we really do need to react to something quickly. We also know that in order to have safe schools, safe communities, we have to have good communication. And the see something, say something, that's a slogan that's out there, and without, just those words doesn't really mean anything. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what that really does mean and what we need it to mean. Because when we see things or we get worried about things, if we don't say anything, sometimes we're not sure what might happen. So that'll be something we'll talk about. And also we really need all of you. We need our families, we need our community partners to do this with us. The schools are not in this by themselves. They're not doing this in isolation. We are always going to be relying on our partners to support us. Parents, you play a vital role. We know that even if as your children are getting older, I've always told parents, the older they get, the closer you get. Whether it's driving the carpool, it's listening in on them, it's knowing what they're worried about, it's knowing who their friends are, it's knowing what is on their electronic devices. It's all of those things that will help us in case we need it. So we know that without parents, we're missing just a huge link. So we will talk a little more about that and how you can get involved and how you can support and help us. We knew that with what happened last week at Summit Middle School with the incidents that occurred, we got to practice some things, which was great. Sometimes, in light of the outcomes, thank goodness nobody was hurt, and thank goodness the outcomes were good, but we also got some really good practice. We had a lot of people in the building, and we had parents who stepped up and supported us and helped us, that were there for actually interviewing young Ameritown role players. But we know that talking to you about this face-to-face is really important. So we want to talk a little bit. Travis is going to debrief the incidents at the middle school. We're going to talk about what it really means to have safe schools. What are those safety procedures that we need to make sure that not only do we have in place, but how we practice them and how we train for them. And then also, we're going to be asking for your help really in that communication piece. How do you communicate with your children about safety and about what to do if they see something, and how they go about saying something? Because we are in this all together, and really safety is at the heart of everybody's main concern about their families, about their children, and it is ours too. So I'd like at this time to introduce Travis Avery, so sorry. I'm reading this note about a spoof that's on the video prompter over there. Travis is our safety coordinator. He is everything emergency, everything safety, spends all his life thinking about ways to keep us safe. He's going to share with us all of the things I described above, but also at the end know that if your questions aren't answered or you have continued things you want to know more about, we'll have time at the end. Thank you. Thank you, Travis.
And I'm just going to use my voice. Can everyone hear me? And just to touch on, somebody at the high school left a video for me as a joke. So that's what Carrie was referencing. So my job with the district is Emergency Response Coordinator is my official title. And basically what that means is I'm responsible for safety and security, but below that or above that is just emergency preparedness for every school in the district as a whole. And that's a kind of a complicated job, but you talk about what we need to do on a district level, on a school level, on a staff level, on a student level, on a parent level, that if we have a safety or security incident in one of our schools, are we responding properly? Do we know what we need to do? And move through those steps. So I'm going to talk through a little bit just last week at the middle school, and then I'm going to tie that into Safe to Tell and then our practices a little bit. So last week at the middle school, last Monday, I believe it was the 1st in the afternoon, we received a Safe to Tell tip, and I'm going to talk about how Safe to Tell works shortly. So we received a tip, and it was for Summit Middle School and labeled Planned School Attack. And then it had some information that wasn't real specific contained within the tip. Law enforcement gets those, school officials get those when they come in. So we pulled together, certainly a concerning label on a tip, pulled together, and then tried to evaluate what was the information in that tip, what we can do with that, what the level of concern is, and move forward. We had some information in that tip that we had a little bit of time. We didn't have to act right that moment, and it gave law enforcement an opportunity to investigate as well. We sent out a communication Monday night saying we had received a tip. Those are challenging that Julie's going to talk about later, some boundaries with how we can communicate and what we can communicate. So we'll talk about that as well. So it took about a day, a little more. Come to find out, this tip is connected to an incident elsewhere in the state. Had no relationship to Summit County nor any of Summit's schools, which is good, fortunate. We put that communication out on Wednesday, hoping to move on. Knowing also the context at the middle school, we've had another incident recently, so nerves were a little sensitive. So trying to be clear that there was no concern with that situation. Thursday morning, received another tip about a threat aimed at the middle school. Now, part of the initial tip on Monday came off of social media, so we were pretty confident that the Thursday tip was more kind of movement of the information across social media, and also students are aware of things, and chatter amongst students. However, it was just a little enough different, not clearly linked, that we didn't want to just assume. We want to take every threat or concern we receive seriously until we can prove otherwise. So at that point on Thursday morning, we kind of we have some concern about this. It's not necessarily a high level of concern because we're pretty sure it's connected to what's going on this week. However, let's put some safety measures in place so that we can give ourselves a little bit of time to evaluate the situation. We could have done lockdown. That's pretty extreme based on a problem that we know that's in the building. I'm going to talk about how that works a little bit more. That seemed like too much. So we went with lockout, which puts a little bit of control on the building with an added element of let's hold all classes where they are. We talked about bag searches, locker searches. That still felt too much, but letting 700 plus students move around the building, go to lockers, and not have that control during passive periods, thought like maybe that's too much risk. So that's how we ended up where we did on Thursday morning. Then we went around class to class, Jeff and Nell, and also district staff all went around, and basically we talked to students, every student who was in the building, and basically said, this is how the week's gone. We've sent information home. Some parents had shared that, some hadn't, some kids knew about it from friends, and then some people were kind of clueless. But we clued them all in and basically said, if you have any information that's new or different from what we just described to you, let your teacher know. We'll bring it down to the office. And Jeff and Nell, and we had a couple sergeants from the sheriff's office talk to students. And we did that for about an hour. We had it was less than 15 students who ended up coming down. But it took us about an hour to talk to them and get parent permission for the cops to talk to them and things like that. Meanwhile, kids were still in classes. You know, if they needed to go to the bathroom, they were allowed to do. Some teachers continued instruction. Some kind of defaulted to more fun activities. And we kind of rely on teachers to figure out the needs of their group in that situation, which they did a good job of. I know a lot of texts went home, I'm bored. That happens. I think there are more of those than I'm freaked out. There were some of those certainly, and certainly some parents texting, hey, I'm freaked out, I'm coming to get you. Totally get that piece, and that's natural and normal, so it wasn't a situation where we couldn't let people come and go in terms of picking up kids, so we allowed that to happen. Got to about midday, had a circle with Jeff and I and the sergeant, and basically said, have we learned anything new? Have we raised our level of concern? Is this all related to what's going on this week? And the answer was no, no, and yes. It was all related to chatter, social media, cycle of what came on Monday. Again, related to this event elsewhere. So at that point, we decided to lift the lockout and try and get things back to normal, knowing that, you know, it's a different day and there's nervousness and stuff like that. So that was pretty much the process of last week. You know, on Thursday, after we were lifting the lockout, we certainly had discussions. What if we get another safe to tell in the next 12 to 24 hours? How do we process through? At what point would we cancel school? At what point would we kind of just assume? So we then, you know, talked through our next step in case something came up before the end of the week. Fortunately, nothing else did. We're able to run school on Friday and go from there. So that was kind of the process last week. How safe to tell works is there's multiple ways a person can put a safe to tell tip in. It's a state setup system that's anonymous. So anybody who receives a tip on our end, ourselves, law enforcement, we don't have any access to who put the tip in. That's protected by state law. We just get the information that they submit. They can submit it by phone, there's a mobile app, text it in, a lot of methods for them. They can submit images, a lot of information can be gathered by that. We get that and then have to start to evaluate it. Some of the challenges with it. It's often submitted by teenagers. They may not know what's helpful information that an adult needs to act on. So that's one challenge. You could get a situation, and we get tips that range from, let's see, we're up at about 50 tips so far this year and about 20 since March, the start of March. And our use of the system in Summit has just grown over the past 3 to 4 years. Tips ranging from depression to suicidal ideation to complaints about bus situations to complaints about staff to planned school attack, threat, and pretty much anything in between. Smoking in the bathroom, and on and on and on. So there's a lot of categories. So basically somebody calls in and says, I have a tip. They have a screen where it gets tagged to a school and what's this kind of subject matter, and then it gets put through State Patrol dispatch, and then they send it on to our dispatch, school officials, law enforcement get it. And then, like I said, we have to kind of process through what's the valuable information in here. If we get a random Snapchat image, what can we do with that? Is there a username? Is there some piece of information that we can follow up on? Obviously, if we get a student name, that's certainly much easier to follow up on. Sometimes it's just sort of a rant with no useful information. I can't do much with that, unfortunately. If it comes in the evening, late at night, which a lot of them do, it's usually myself, but I plug in with law enforcement if it's the type of concern that they should handle that evening, and they'll make a visit to the residents. If it's something, maybe a smaller, more minor case of bullying, I don't want a minor bullying, but something the school can handle the next day, we'll work on it starting the next day. So that's kind of how Safe to Tell works and the process through those. And the challenge, with something like planned school attack, threat, is there enough information that we can determine what the level of concern is and act on it? And sometimes gives us a direction, and sometimes it's much more challenging to do. But I think fundamentally we try and err on the side of caution, circle up with law enforcement, make a plan, and what can we do to address it going forward. If it was such a case where we were that concerned, we would cancel school. If we were or couldn't figure it out and really had a level of unsurety about it, that's on our list of options. Canceling school. Certainly don't want to knee-jerk and do that all the time, obviously, but try and figure out where that concern is based on the information. So it's Safe to Tell. Our basic emergency procedures, particularly at the classroom level that we work on regularly, we use what's called the Standard Response Protocol. That's was produced by the I Love You Guys Foundation. If those of you have been in the state for a while, there was a school shooting in Bailey several years ago. The student who was killed in that's father and mother formed this foundation, and one of their main goals with it was providing consistent response protocols for schools. So we get that from them. They're over in Bailey. And so they have 4 basic classroom responses. We got handouts out there if you didn't get one. Lock down, lock out, evacuation, and shelter. And anytime you're working in the emergency response field, you can't have a response for every little thing. It's too complicated to remember, particularly for school staff who don't operate in this world on a daily basis. So we try and keep things somewhat simple and have what's called multi-hazard, that's the official term, but basically flexible procedures that can respond to different things. And they're based on location of the threat. Lockdown's the real common one we're all familiar with now from the media. That's based on a problem inside your building. And more than not, a problem that's centered around violence inside the school building. Evacuation is the old fire drill, but it's basically if you want to get out of the building. It could also be based on a utility issue. There's several other reasons for that. Lockout, which is what we used on Thursday, was generally a problem outside the building where we want to lock the problem out. As I said, we used it a little bit differently on Thursday, but that could be criminal activity in the neighborhood. If we're at Summit High and there's a problem in the residences over here, we might go into lockout, make sure everybody was in the building and that we had everybody safe in the building. The last one is shelter. We don't use that a ton because it's really about natural hazards, and we don't see things like hurricanes and tornadoes here, but we do use elements of it at time, and I put it out to staff and students so they're aware of it. A couple other kind of terms it's good to be aware of. Hold all classes is kind of a new procedure that's been recommended, and I'll be installing that next year in a more formal manner, but we use that, a part of what we used on Thursday was that. Just allows classes to be held in place. A lot of times you might have a student medical situation in a hallway, and can you hold all classes to allow staff to deal with that before you have several hundred students trying to change classes. And then the last one is parent-student reunification. And that's something I've been working on the last couple of years and putting plans in place in the building to make sure that we can effectively put students back with parents when we have an emergency situation. So, and that's something, my next step with that is formalizing what we do and then communicating that out to parents so they know what's going on when they show up. We did that on Thursday because we had a lot of parents come to the building and want to pick up their kids. The basic process went pretty well, a little bit of learning there for us. And then, so practice. So we drew a drill a month. Starting at the beginning of school, go a drill a month. Couple of months, I make them do 2. Just so, because that's a lot of material to cover. I also put out an email to staff. These are our kind of highlight points on this procedure or how we're going to emphasize it this month. By state law, we do a lot of evacuation. That's kind of state law, and then fit the rest of them in. Do lockdown twice a year, once at the start of each semester. And just really try and, my goal is a lot of times trying to create flexible thinking. Again, these procedures are supposed to be flexible in terms of what they deal with. So I'm trying to create flexible thinking, sometimes in a chaotic situation, the potential for a chaotic situation, and those don't go well together sometimes. So that's definitely one challenge. And also, and I'd love for this to change, but I'm not the boss of it. If teachers learn how to teach and educate, I'd love for them to spend a semester in their training, like this is all the emergency stuff and logistics stuff and how you do a purchase order and all that stuff, other stuff teachers have to do. But they don't, so they have to get it from me while they're still trying to teach. So, and that's some of where this joke comes from. Everybody loves when I show up on a monthly basis because I'm interrupting education. Let me check my notes real quick. Kind of within the plan of things, and we certainly talked about this Thursday. I know this came up as a question for elementary parents. It was elementary testing day, which is a lot of movement in and out of buildings. Anytime we have an incident, another question that I have to deal with is we've got the situation going on at this school. What do we need at the larger school or the larger district at every other building? In this case, it was pretty middle school specific. So we certainly let law enforcement know. They let their duty officers know, let the town PDs know. We had this thing going on. Certainly if you could stop by the elementaries, the high school, that's great. But the way this came in, it was specific to the middle school, so that was less important. But I know we've got parents who have elementary kids and middle school kids and high school kids. And so that was one thing that maybe didn't get dealt with quite as effectively as I would have liked on Thursday in terms of what everybody needed to know and what steps they needed to take district-wide, particularly with that testing day situation. As Carrie mentioned, my last couple of points, as Carrie mentioned, the good thing on Thursday, the lockout went well. Staff did their job. Parents were pretty comfortable. I had a parent at the middle school share with me in classic teenager. She, at one point the daily had it, we went into lockdown, which they then corrected. The parent had picked up on that, texted her daughter, said, hey, you're in lockdown, how's it going? The daughter emailed or texted back, Mom, we're in lockout, not lockdown, which you can add whatever teenage tone there you'd like. But that made me feel good. Like the kids know. I think one improvement for me going forward is in our cycle of making sure parents know the difference a little bit better. And then 2, just on that communication topic, which Julie's going to dive into a little bit more. I think it's important to note we're trying to communicate, and we also know I actually have to train cops and firefighters sometimes that in the school district we have to communicate faster and sooner and more than they do if it's just a issue in the community sometimes. So we're always pressing to do that. We're trying to do a good job of that. I know it's hard to communicate all what I said in 3 paragraphs. So I know, we've been talking about that a lot with the things that have happened at the middle school, which Julie's going to get into. Normally I'd ask any questions, but we're doing that differently. So that's what I've got. Thank you. You want an MC, or would you like me to introduce?
You've got your mic on.
Okay. So Julie's going to come up and talk communications next. So this is Julie McCluskey, our school district director of communications.
Great. Thanks, Travis. Actually, I think we had you next.
Oh.
Jamie, would you like to go?
Do you want to close
Go-
the show?
yeah, go ahead. You might as well.
Russell.
He's a showman. Hi, everyone. If I haven't met you, I'm Julie McCluskey, Director of Communications and Community Engagement. And first and foremost, I want to thank all of you for coming. We have talked about the importance of safety and security, but having you here tonight means a lot to us. Your partnership means a lot, and communicating with you is very important. I know that in communications, that's how I build a connection with our families. You need to be able to trust that when something happens, you're going to get the truth from us in a timely manner that certainly puts your concerns, questions, puts you at ease, that things are under control. And I will tell you, the last month has been challenging for us. We honestly and sincerely have made every effort to include our parents in our communications with what has been going on. But we've learned a couple of things and tried to explain that, and I want to hit a couple of those points right now. First of all, communications around Safe to Tell are very challenging. That particular tip that comes in is protected by state law. Colorado protects the identity of the tipster, the person or student or parent or community member who sends that information to us. It also protects the content of that tip. Now, it doesn't mean we can't react and explore and find out what's going on, but it does mean in our communication, we do have a requirement to protect that confidentiality. There are also a number of laws that govern school districts around student privacy. So when students are specifically involved in an incident, we can't share specifics about that student, family, or the situation in a way that would identify that student. And I know that's tough. I think I heard from a number of parents just that need to know more, that want to know more. And I'm very respectful of that. I hope you can appreciate some of the challenges we face, but also what those guidelines are, and our true commitment to try and share as much with you as we can. We also realized through this incident that we have been using Alert Solutions, which is a communications platform that connects to PowerSchool. And a number of parents told us they did not get our emails. If you're one of those parents, please stop at the table out here tonight. We want to update your information. We believe most of the situations we've investigated, parent emails are in the system incorrectly, maybe a typo. They're missing. We didn't get them at the time of registration. They've changed. That happens with cell phone numbers too. So I invite all of you, if you did not get our communication this last week, please be sure to update it. If we do find that there's a system problem, that Alert Solutions is not delivering our communication, we will let you know. Just quick show of hands. How many of you received our emails from last week or before? Great. Just one. Okay. Second one, never. Those are the types of things. Please, we'll talk afterwards. We do know if there's something in the system that we need to fix, we're going to do it. I will mention that parents can unsubscribe from our emails. You may have seen that. At the very bottom of every message we send, you can unsubscribe. And we've heard from some parents this week who said, well, yeah, I unsubscribed because I don't want to hear about all the things going on, the activities or whatever. That also means that we can't reach you in an emergency. We are going to also look at the system to see if we can override those unsubscribes. But at this moment, if you've done that, we can reset it for you, and then you'll be getting our information. I appreciate that, and certainly my office, my door is always open. If you're not getting our communication, let us know. The last thing I'd like to talk about with Safe to Tell is how important it is that all of you take advantage of calling Safe to Tell and reporting tips and talking to your student about doing the same. Travis mentioned that we've had a number of Safe to Tells and students are using that system more and more. That is a good thing. And while we are at over 50 so far this year, I would much rather get 5 Safe to Tells that turned out to be nothing than not hear about something when it happens. So your students, if you can talk to them about them, invite them to be a part of the safety blanket for all of us, that we're all taking care of each other. We have had parents use Safe to Tell, just so all of you know. If your student is uncomfortable, may not feel comfortable sharing information, or you think it's important enough and you have more information to share, as Travis said, adult to adult, please pick up the phone and call. The numbers are out here. We invite you to use it. Share that with your friends as well. I think in some of the situations where parents have called, it's been very helpful, and particularly in some safety concerns with our high schoolers and middle schoolers. That's all that I have to talk about, but I, again, invite any of you to call me anytime. Call our central office if you are having challenges with communication. We continue to try and improve what we're sharing and always welcome your feedback. I do want to take just a quick moment and invite our principals who are here to stand up real quickly. And I think we have a few. Am I wrong? Tessa, True, Greg, Nell, Jeff, Crystal, I think Joel must have left. Woody, back there. I just want all of you to know our principals are doing an amazing job training kids, talking about safety and security, and I'd love to give them a round of applause. And I have the pleasure of introducing Sheriff Jamie Fitzsimons, but I also want to call attention to, do they call you like ex-sheriff, new chief?
Highly paid chief?
Highly paid chief. Yeah. It's great to have you here tonight. And our school resource officer, Wanda Wilkerson. Round of applause for these 3 folks as well. I think one of the absolute most brilliant things in this community is our partnership with law enforcement. This past month, we've seen a lot of these folks. They're good people. They guide us. They direct us in what we're doing. And that makes all the world of difference. So, Jamie.
Thank you. Ouch. Good evening, everybody. In respect for our time here tonight, and especially because I absolutely want to hear what you have to say and what questions you might have, I'd also want to acknowledge Patrick Finley, Sergeant from Breckenridge, representing Breckenridge PD. The Chiefs and I doesn't want to stay. The Chiefs and I do share a great relationship. We do work in partnership with the district. Dylan and Frisco Chiefs couldn't be here tonight, and they didn't have any staff to send a representative due to obviously short staffing issues, but they've also wanted to at least let you know that we all stand united with the school district in protecting your kids. I mean, that's what's most important to us. Without repeating everything that Carrie and Travis and Julie said, I'd like to echo what they said, that your kids' safety is paramount to all of us, including law enforcement. As Carrie alluded to, we do, not only do they inside, but on the outside and in partnership with the district, the fire departments, law enforcement, EMS, we all plan, train, test critical incidents in the schools. So if there was a critical incident and it did play out, you need to know that we're ready for that. We're absolutely ready to handle that. So what's important is to realize is that law enforcement's role in any of these, since we're centered around Safe to Tell tips, is although we work in partnership with the district, we have 2 different roles, right? And we have to be really careful about maintaining those roles and walking that fine line, because as the sheriff, I can't use the school district as an agent of law enforcement. I can't have them enact on my behalf and do something. I have to conduct my own criminal investigation. But what the school does is they conduct an administrative review and investigation, and we run parallel investigations and we communicate throughout. One of the best tools that this district has is Wanda Wilkerson, our your school resource officer, because she's embedded in the district, and when we get these things, we're able to go to her as a great source of information to try to help us navigate between students, parents, the district, and she already has so much knowledge of your families that it opens doors for us that we couldn't get through with the school. But that's not to say the school doesn't work in partnership with us and give us the information, certainly in a timely manner when we need it. But it's really important to understand that it's two different streams. And so that's why sometimes you'll see two different communication streams. They were talking about communications. Sometimes you'll see something different from me than you'll see from them. And it may be because they're not privy to the information. It may be it's because it's not really in their wheelhouse to share with you. It's in my wheelhouse. But you got to know that I will always share with you, the truth, and I'll always share with you what I can when I can. That I can't always share with you in real time some specific details about a criminal investigation. But you have to know that we're in the trenches together, sometimes all night, figuring these things out. So that might explain sometimes why you might see a press release from me that looks a little different than a press release from them. But when we can, we'll communicate together, and we will try to draft some sort of messaging out to you together. But another important thing to remember is that, as a legal entity, this school district can do an administrative review like they did that day and make decisions based on their administrative review. They can do that. And then what will happen is, of course, I'm going to support whatever decision they make. And sometimes it's a reactive support, right? If they make a decision outside of law enforcement and it needs law enforcement's attention, we will support it like we did the other day. And sometimes I'll make a decision based on the criminal investigation, on the evidence that's presented to me, on how we should proceed. So it's a real fine line, but you just gotta know that we got this, right? We've got this, and your kid's safety is paramount to us. So let's see if I had anything else for you. No, I just can't reiterate enough as they did before me about Safe2Tell. If you're not part of it, if your children aren't part of it, get them on it. Get the mobile app if they have cell phones. We get more information from the Safe2Tell. It's an incredible, incredible database for us. And it is all confidential, but for us that can work with the information, it's just incredible what we're able to do with that. So I encourage all of you to get your children involved with Safe2Tell.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jamie. So I think at this time we'd like to open it up to questions. If you have things written down on a slip that you'd like us to read, you could, do we have some runners that are going to run around? Okay, Kathy, she's running around. Otherwise, we can also just do raise of hands and you guys can just shout out your questions. I'd like to thank Travis and Julie and Jamie for obviously the wealth of information that they have and shared tonight, but also they're going to be probably the ones that will answer most of the questions, but we're all available, so come back. Oh, thank you. Okay. The first one is, when is the state allowed to release info on the Safe2Tell tip?
So I'll tackle that one. I talked to Safe2Tell during these last 2 tips, and although here in the state of Colorado, anyone can make a CORA request or an open records request, they say that no one to date has been successful of getting information out of Safe2Tell. Mm-hmm. So the state has it pretty well locked down.
Interesting. This says, how do you know when a tip or call comes into a specific school that is not means for a distraction for a target really for a different school? So.
Well, I can answer that
Travis
again.
and
Yeah.
Jamie, yep.
Like this last one that we determined came from another county. When we get a Safe2Tell tip, it's based out of who's reporting it. So the person that reported the Safe2Tell tip that was not in this county was out of our middle school. And since that's the only information that the Safe2Tell dispatchers had, they assign it to Summit Middle School. So it's based on the person reporting it, unless they say, I go to Summit Middle School, but I'm reporting something in Jeffco. If they don't say that, this particular person just said, hey, there's this photo, and it's on the internet, and I am an 8th grader in Summit Middle School. So that's why that came to us.
I'll ask these, if you wouldn't mind maybe reading that one to Travis, and then he can say it. Great. What is the size of the emergency response staff team at the district? Travis and Travis. I will tell you that last week's incident, Travis certainly took the lead. All of us at the district office participated. So there were probably 10 or 12 of us that went from central administration over to Summit Middle School, and we have been trained in a variety of roles that we all take and play when one of these incidents occurs. As we've learned each and every time, we have to be flexible, roles change. Travis does a great job of directing. I usually handle communications. We have a number of people who help out with the operation as it's overseen. Anything to add to that, Travis?
I missed the first part. Sorry.
What's the emergency response staff team at the district? Travis and question mark.
Travis.
Yeah,
Whatever
Travis.
we can grab sometimes. So we work on that both at a building level and the district level in terms of trying to identify staff who, as I talked earlier, who have a good kind of head on their shoulders quality. I will say not all of our staff are good in emergencies, and that's okay. They're good educators, which is what we want fundamentally, but some of them, that chaos thing I mentioned earlier is not their best skill set. So we try and get staff at the building level who can operate and help us with our emergency response. And then at the district level, as Julie indicated, it's often a fill-in, task them out. Can we train you to help with reunification, or you to come help with student information, or help put people in help specific tasks
I
a
can
little
answer
bit.
that.
But
I
Travis,
think they
you've been
wanna
working
know when they're
specifically
gonna
with
know. I'll
teams
start.
at every school.
Oh, got it.
So that's helpful to know that you have some go-to people. Obviously, teachers in classrooms are always the best safety measure and safety net for our students. We know that when teachers who are familiar with kids, as in Thursday's lockout, it was very nice for teachers who knew their students to be in the classrooms as we went around and taught and spoke with them. Because they have the best relationships with kids, and I think kids felt really comfortable with saying, I might have some more information, and if they weren't comfortable telling us, they were comfortable telling their teachers, so that was helpful.
You want to do that one, Jamie?
This is how will the district, I almost have to do this, How will the district communicate efficiently with parents of students who are on the list, knowing that the privacy law is protecting part of the situation? So whoever asked this question, I hate to out you, but are you asking how are we going to communicate with people? Well, it says parents of students. Parents of students that were on the list have been communicated with. So all those kids were interviewed.
I'm happy to ask it.
All right.
So,
I'm happy to
we
answer
heard
it.
at the beginning, we heard at the beginning from the district, but we haven't heard anything since then. And I know you can't tell us, like what's gonna happen, but it would be helpful.
DA maybe.
So, and here's why. This is that fine line I was talking about between administrative investigation and criminal. This thing obviously went down the criminal path. The sheriff's office has concluded our investigation, and it's currently at the district attorney's office. I don't customarily send out any more press releases on, hey, we've done this criminal investigation, and now it's at the DA's office. What usually happens is when the DA reviews the case, then there will be a press release about the findings of the investigation and the findings of the district attorney. So as long as that, to help put in perspective, why I don't communicate in the middle of that is because it's still an active investigation until it's not. So once my detectives present it to the DA, there's the chance the DA could come back with a list of questions, right? And wants to chase down these certain rabbit holes, interview these people. Hence why I don't comment that the investigation is closed and at the DA's office. So it's not closed until the DA says it's closed.
Can I ask a little more
Sure.
in
I'll-
the same direction? We've heard, and I know rumors are very dangerous, and I appreciate appreciate all that you guys are contained with the law and so forth, but rumors have been said that this child will never be returning to the Summit School District. Do you know that? Does anyone know that?
That's a district question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let Carrie answer.
Sure. So there are state laws that govern student discipline. That's what our board policy is written around. We have to adhere to those policies. So those are the policies that we have to follow. You can look those up. They're on our website. There's no one clean answer I can give you. We have to follow the discipline process. Obviously, in the middle of an investigation, we're starting those other pieces. But currently we don't have resolution, and when there is resolution, that isn't something that we can communicate because it is around student privacy.
Okay,
So
what
that's
you've communicated so far is all we're gonna get on that first issue. That's it. We don't know if he or she is returning. We don't know if he or she's in the community, if our children are safe from him, whether they're on the list or not, or her. Him or her.
Let me throw out a couple of things.
Yeah.
Yes. yes.
because I know it's
bet.
hard.
Having any follow-up communication on that specific issue
Sure.
Right.
has been a little
It still
difficult.
feels
Yes.
out there. Yep.
And I would say, as we communicated initially, and probably did one additional time, but let me say again, and happy to talk with any of you one-on-one as well. When we are in the middle of an investigation, and there is a concern involving a student, that student is not at school until the investigation is completed. Very often, our investigation, while it is running separately from a criminal investigation, those results may impact our investigation. So a student is not returned to school while that investigation is going on. And certainly you can look at our disciplinary procedures. There are certain levels, including suspension and expulsion, for any student that commits a certain offense at a certain level. And we can talk about those as well. We don't have an update on the situation, and Carrie is right, there won't be much that we can share, but we want to make sure everybody does know what the policy is.
Mm-hmm.
That we can talk about, and that we can share very clearly. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, I'll read the policy, in detail, understanding that piece. I guess I hadn't gathered
Yeah,
that from the
sorry.
communications yet, that if you look at the policy, you might be able to answer the question by yourself.
Thank you.
And to give you an example of how fine this line can be, so I can recall a situation recently, or more than one, that while there's a criminal investigation going on, the investigation has led us to believe that there was no criminal act, but it's going to take a while to still go through the system. The school independently might make a decision to return the person that's the focus of that investigation back to school.
Okay.
See, so there's
Based on
there.
their investigation.
Well, based on us communicating and
Yep.
us saying, hey, we don't see any criminal act here, but it's going to take a minute to go through the system. It has to go through a DA review, which could take, a long time. But we've all kind of met. We met with the DA, and we don't see any criminal act here.
But
And
the
we'll
other
share
piece-
that with the
right.
school.
The other piece of that, though, is that we still will follow our district policy.
Yeah.
Every
Always.
time. Yes.
Go ahead, Carol.
I didn't fill out a form, but now we're kind of doing this. There was a question I had on press releases and information release and vagueness.
Yeah.
Being on social media, we saw Eagle County's press release, what they put out about this incident, and they were very specific. I'm just wondering why our district doesn't have the same transparency, and why do we have to learn it from another source and not our own school district when it says straight up online what was going on. I was conflicted there. I just don't know why.
At the time we were releasing information, Caroline, we were certainly working very closely with the sheriff. And because of the investigation that was going on over there at that time, we were asked not to communicate the district that was involved. We were asked not to communicate any of the information from the Safe to Tell, which we would not have normally. As I understood from Eagle County Schools, they did not share any specific information. I don't doubt that because it was on social media, that information may have got out anyway. But we were trying to be very respectful of the legal process, criminal process that was going on over there. And I don't know, Sheriff, if you want to comment on that either.
Yeah, I mean, what Julie said. I mean, it's not my position to comment on an investigation happening in another county. Certainly, you can understand our frustration and the struggle we all go through, because we know by the time something even hits Safe to Tell that it's been all over. That you guys probably know before we know, before it ever hits Safe to Tell. So many times it's frustrating for us. But I certainly wouldn't want another county commenting on an investigation in my county or my school district, because we still have to follow the process, and we still have to dispel any hint that it might take place here, right? So we have to do ours completely independently, even though we have determined this was another county. So.
Good question. Couple of good ones here. Has the district considered including students in emergency emails or texts via PowerSchool or other? I failed to mention, part of our practice in an event is that we are communicating with staff as frequently as we can via email. In this instance at the middle school last week, we sent staff a specific text and told them, give this to your students to send to their parents. And that text said something to the effect, I am safe, the students here are safe, we are in our classrooms, and we are holding class as usual, we're doing activities, etc. So we do try to communicate directly with students through our staff in those situations. We're also on the PA system, and so leaders were making announcements building-wide as the event was going on. That was a good question. Naomi?
So just kind of a follow-up to that. I got the message through my daughter's friend, because my daughter said that they shouldn't have their cell phones. It's a tech violation, so hers was in her locker.
Oh.
So will they be able to keep their cell phones?
That was a good question. Hey, Shabbat.
In middle school. What do you guys think about that?
Is it?
We actually have a team on our building leadership team right now that is reviewing our cell phone policy. They started Monday, so that is on the agenda.
I did have students ask me as I was walking out of a classroom after communicating with the students and said that your teacher will have a message for you to text, and they said, they turned to their teacher and they said, did you hear that? We can have our phones. So I was like, oh.
But I'd also point out every student now has a device and
Yes,
can message
and
you
can
that way
message
as
you
well,
from their
which we
Chromebook.
did some as well.
Erin?
As a follow-up too, my daughter was on a field trip. She doesn't have a cell phone. I'm old school like that, but rumors, concerns, my friends, how do we manage that message? And that, and there was a teacher there, of course, so the teacher knew what was going on. And my daughter wasn't concerned because it was far away, but at the same time, how do you, I can't even imagine how you control the message beyond if there are kids outside of the school itself, so to keep them calm and that's.
Travis?
We did let the teacher know on the field trip. That was one of those kind of like with the elementary schools level of, what do we do with that event going on there? Made the teacher aware, and again, probably weren't explicit enough with Mr. Brown on, hey, would you do X, Y, and Z with your students? So I'll certainly own that. That's one of the, this isn't an excuse, just one of the challenges of the layers of what's going on in a school day. And if we have a situation in one place, do we make sure, and we try and then put our heads together and go, what else is going on, and how do we need to address all of that? And I know that may not have been clear enough for that teacher. So, and then the rumor thing, as best we can, we try and give students some information and put fact into that and let them communicate that out. But it may not always be clear to them. It may, they may have the same vague feeling some of our communication has left adults with. And so then they feel, unfortunately the world today, you fill information if you don't have it. So we really try and fill that with fact as best we can, but sometimes there's a time delay, or there's challenges with it. I won't say it's always perfect and rumors are tricky. So.
Rumors are tricky, and I want to mention, while we were trying to handle what was going on in the school and get out good communication, we were battling a lot of rumors ourselves that were appearing on social media. And we had 2 staff members dedicated to following Summit County moms. We love our Summit County moms, but following that feed because we wanted to make sure that nothing got out there that was erroneous. At one point I heard, and I don't know if it was Summit County Moms or another site, that it was, someone had said there had been a shooting at the middle school. And you know, rumor control is a challenge for us. We do try to stay ahead of that. If you hear something, please verify it with our website, a trusted school communication, and help us stop rumors. You know, we want people to ask from the source, not pass things along, because it certainly does incite a lot of fear. And we ask our kids that too, and certainly did through this. I want to ask this next one, and I'm going to give it to these 2 guys. Can you please describe the training students receive, hide versus run, when to run or hide, where and how to fight back, and how does the district spread calm amongst students?
I'm going to take the last part first, and then I'll get into the other bit of language. You know, I think fundamentally kids follow the example of teachers. So if the teachers are calm, if they're with an adult, and they've got some trust in that adult, they follow the lead of the adult. My favorite example of that, if you guys recall, several years ago we had a snowstorm move in at around dismissal time and also had a chlorine leak in Frisco at the same time, and a blizzard and lots of fun all at the same time. And we had middle school students on a bus for over an hour and had no issues, which is not what you might expect middle schoolers on a bus for an hour to do in a normal situation. So that's kind of, you know, again, we talked about giving them the message, giving them some information, letting them know they're safe and that there's a plan, and trying to put, put adults in that position to provide that information and be reassuring to kids. So that's where I think that works. Now, good question about, so federal guidance on active shooter, active threat, and I didn't get into this specifically, but we do cover it with staff, is called run, hide, fight. So they give this to adults a lot. So if you're in contact with an attack, an act of violence in your workplace, at the mall, in the public sphere, federal guidance is run, hide, fight. Run away, hide from it, and as a last resort, fight the attacker. There's some problem with that for kids. So around our lockdown practice, I talk with staff, and I'm relying on them to provide some age-appropriate discussion with their kids on, and we call it, because I want to fit it into the school environment, move. So basically, if you can't lock down, you don't need to stay in that space. You need to move to a space you can lock down. Secure, which is the same as lockdown. And the reason lockdown in the school environment is really important, in all of these attacks going back to the 90s, there's only been one instance in a school setting where a properly locked down room has been breached in an attack. So that's pretty good statistical odds. Again, they're still very rare. I want to point that out. Schools are still really safe places. But when they do happen and lockdown is performed effectively, the attack moves on from that door. If getting in the nitty-gritty, the psychological studies of these situations and people who perpetrate these, they want a high body count, and working their way through a barricade prevents them from doing that. So that's why that lockdown piece is really the focus of school response. And then we do talk about defend. I use the term defend with staff rather than fight, which is a little better school appropriate language. And if a class comes into direct contact with an attacker and they can't run and hide, essentially then their option is to defend or fight. Don't get into that with students a whole lot. I don't know that that's an appropriate conversation for school to have. I think that's a better conversation for families to have. And if we'd like to have a sidebar on that, it could be a whole evening of its own. So that's kind of how we fit lockdown in an active threat, active shooter situation into our protocol and what we talk about.
Jamie, anything?
No, I mean, that's all district stuff. As I said earlier, you know, we train with the district, with all the cops all over the county annually for different incidents. We've trained multiple times here at the school for active shooters here in the school. So, and the other thing we do as law enforcement is when the schools have drills, we participate in those drills. So if we're not unfamiliar to your children.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
You have a question?
Oh, and this, if I missed this, Elsa, please correct me. I believe this question, because my Spanish is a little rough. Basically, if we put a procedure into place, evacuation, lockout, lockdown, etc., who makes that decision? Did I get it? Yes. Okay, thank you. So that goes back to that flexible thinking that we work on, because my office is in central office, and I don't magically appear when there's an emergency. So it's really relying on even starting with a classroom teacher to identify that there's a concern, a situation, and make a decision. And that could be the classroom teacher. That could then be a quick call to school administration, depending on the severity. But try and empower teachers, and probably should at some point try and push that to students, but haven't done that. But empower the person who's dealing with that incident immediately to make some decisions for the safety of their group and the building. So it really depends on the situation and who's there.
And I think you have one more, Jamie.
This question said, how will you ensure the 8th grade end of year barbecue and party are safe? We'll certainly, I was telling Julie, work with the school district, and if there's something that the sheriff's office can do, we'll certainly do it.
Great. Sorry.
Can you share with us just how you determine if a safe to tell threat is credible or not credible? I'm sure it seems impossible.
We consider,
Somehow decide
well,
whether or not it's credible.
here's how we decide. We take
Right.
every threat serious. Every threat is credible to me. So we chase down, we don't treat any threat any different. We treat them all the same. They're real till they're not real. And we sit there, and sometimes I wasn't kidding when I said it, sometimes it's through the night that we're all working together to try to resolve this. Some are really easy. Some are, as they touched on, a home check. Some are something where we know the kid's at home with the parent. We can go to the house, talk to the parent, discuss the safe to tell tip with them, and ensure the safety of their child.
It seems like it opens itself up though for abuse. Like, you know, a kid that doesn't want to go to school tomorrow, and you know, in my days, pull the fire alarm.
Yeah.
But just, I don't understand. I'm conflicted as to how you would process that.
You know, I think, if I may, you know, a lot of our messaging when we push this out to students is the severity, the seriousness with which we take every tip we receive, and there also can be consequences. Yes, it's anonymous, but Safe to Tell does have some mechanism, because Colorado State Dispatch does see that, and if they think it's a false report or have some concern about that, there is ways to follow up with that. So, you know, I think kids get that it's a serious thing and should be used appropriately. We've really not had many concerns that were unfounded that come in. They may not be quite as severe as the student might think they are, but they're not false reports. So I think we've been fortunate in that regard, and I think, you know, I think parents have done a good job with this, but you know, it's a different day and age from when we were kids, and I think kids are aware of that, for good or for bad. But they are aware. They know we take the practice and the monthly practice of drills seriously, and so I've not seen any abuse of the system.
And the kids rat out each other. They do. I mean, if someone was doing that, kids just rat them out and saying, hey, I heard Johnny called in this thing. It's not real.
So somewhere deep in the system, there is maybe some traceability to where it comes from. It's just not public.
There's traceability. It's confidential.
Confidential.
Yeah.
Okay.
Protected.
It's
And we
absolutely.
don't see it.
Right, that makes
Yeah.
sense to me. That,
Yeah.
you know, there's a firewall in between the
Right.
people who act on the information and where it comes from.
Right.
way within your emails, like I know you have to be vague, but can you kind of put it on a scale? Because I know the thing, you know, at the middle school, because they were all locked in their classroom, I think a lot of us parents freaked out much more than when they're just locked in the school. Like, so is there any way that you guys can even put a scale?
So I want to address that because we've heard that from a few people, our staff even. Is there a way we could have, green, yellow, red, or, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I'm certainly willing to explore that. I think we all are in trying to, communicate better. The challenge is, until the investigation has run its course, sometimes we can't make that call. And I think even Monday, at the point we wanted to make parents aware, if we had truly believed what had come in created a situation where school wasn't safe, we would not have had school. However, we wanted people to be aware that if you see something, say something. We know if parents have that heads up, something's going on, you might be paying more attention, you might talk to your student, you might learn something, and that can help us. We actually, and I think it was Tuesday, we had a call from a parent who, in talking to their student about the letter that had gone home, learned something that was very valuable for us. It helped us kind of track down where this was, and that's when we found out it was on social media. So it was one of those really good moments where it worked. But I appreciate that, and I've heard that, and I think we'll look at, is there a way for us to do that in the right way, in a responsible way?
Like I know on Thursday, like I went and I did pick up my daughter, and there were a ton of parents there, and I haven't seen that at any of the other events.
Sure.
You know? And so, yeah, then later on it's like, oh, it's really nothing.
I think we learned that in the community, lockout versus lockdown, that we need to do a better job of making sure parents understand a lockout really is, we're keeping kids in the building, but it's business as usual. And I own that we could do that part better, and that might help certainly.
Well, to me, that seems like business as usual, no big deal. You know, whereas then too, it's like, well, they're locked in
In the classrooms.
That seems
Yeah, I don't know, Travis or?
I think the challenge with, one challenge with doing a scale or something like that is, how do you decide, and then what if you're wrong? You don't want to make label something green, low level of concern, and then the next day suddenly it's red. So I think that's, a challenge on that side. And the response is dictated by the problem, as I talked about earlier, and so we needed to hold kids in classes on Thursday to help with the investigation, and that felt like the most appropriate. And it's hard, like I said, to put that into 3 paragraphs and why and how and that sort of thing. So that's it just bumps up with some of the challenges. I'm not trying to good, bad excuse. It's just part of the challenge with this process. And I think where since we're in custody of your children during that time and have to communicate a little faster, sometimes then might happen in the public in a similar situation. And it's a challenge.
Not to belabor that topic, but I know the parents that I spoke with Monday night, who we all band together, did you get the email, what do you think? There was a lacking of a wording that said that it's okay. It just needed something that let us know, we know it's not real, and I don't know how you word that without giving anything away, or jeopardizing that maybe it's not, but I didn't send my child on Tuesday, and I felt really bad after that I overreacted. A lot of people didn't send their kids, but it was just that vagueness, is the word?
Yeah.
That there was just something missing. So then when Thursday happened, we were all like, oh my God. So
We were
I think
too.
you guys handled it really, really well. It was just that one piece that on Monday was missing from them. There was enough concern to write the email, but it didn't leave us that, oh, it's okay.
To add to that just a little bit, from the previous incident and the previous communications, when investigation was still going on, things were still happening, you reiterated over and over that our children are safe, the threat is contained. We got that sense of relief, okay, everything's fine. In that communication on Monday, we didn't get your children are safe, things are under control, we're on top of this, just the reiteration that everything's gonna be okay. And I think that's why some of us chose not to have kids at school on Tuesday, and then we went, oh,
Yeah.
probably should have been at school.
I think it was the wording
Not
that
knowing
said,
enough, the
the
vagueness
wording
and the
said,
confidence.
and say it again, it was something to the effect of, we don't have enough information. And that left us, well, if you don't have enough information, how do you know that it's not real? So that little bit of wording was different.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Seems to me like there's, from our perspective, there's a major social emotional component that just seems to not be discussed here. You guys, I've heard nothing but amazing feedback by the response, but literally nothing in relation to, besides of course going around class to class, and that's wonderful, but the next day after school, kids didn't get anything about it, it's just business as usual. And I don't want my kids to be desensitized to this. I mean, this is stuff that we're on the edge of our seats here, and you know, twice in 2 months is a lot. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have it simply because of, you know, you guys did a good job. You had got the tips, but what are we doing for the kids after the events? Because when they come home to us, we want to make them feel comfortable and good. With limited information, of course, that we're getting, or without those words, everything's safe, it's hard for us to feel good to help them feel good.
That's a great comment. We were working with our school counselors through this, and certainly had talked about that next day and being prepared for students that might still be anxious and what they
It seems
may
very
need.
individualized at that point, as opposed to everybody needs to
Like
feel
bringing
that
kids
calm.
together.
Follow
Sure,
message.
sure.
So I will say,
Yeah.
Scott, and this has come up when we've had a lot going on with some of our experience with student death here at the high school in particular. So we did discuss with staff that Thursday last week at the middle school, you know, what do you guys think? Because we did a whole bunch of stuff after a month ago. And so, you know, we're a little reliant on staff. You guys were with kids all day. What do you think? And they, you know, their thought was, and good or bad, I'll take criticism. Their thought was, you know, can we get this back to normal and let kids settle in and have that routine piece then go. And if somebody individually is struggling or seems like they're having a rough day,
I understand both sides.
we can, yeah, no, I know you do, and we can address it that way. So we kind of took, and not to throw staff under the bus, you know, that was our conversation Thursday after school. What can we do for you guys? What can we do for students? How do you guys want to proceed? And to be honest, we also talked with staff as staff too. And I think they were feeling a little normalcy with them and their kids was the way they wanted to go. So, good or bad, that we did, I would say we at least tried to address it. And then we've talked this week a little bit, you know, let some air come in and what do we need to do going forward next?
We've talked about a student assembly. We've talked about more student communication. I think we've really tried now, in these days since, just tried to read the temperature in the building and respond appropriately. I think even after the incident at the end of March, we had thought a student assembly, student classroom advisory activities, something where we could really digest that, and just again felt a little bit of time helps, and you know, allow normal to return and emotions to settle in. So good feedback, and certainly as we continue to debrief this incident and keep talking about next steps, we'll keep that in mind.
And I would echo that as well. The staff, I mean the students as well as all the parents that were in the building, all the staff that were in the building, all the staff that just swooped in and just did whatever it was that needed to be done. Everybody really did a masterful job, and that's one thing we can count on, is that when there is something going on, people, especially, you know, in our schools and in our community, step up. So our partnerships, obviously the communication piece is always going to be challenging for us, but having you all here tonight is really of benefit to us because you can share and spread the word. And then, you know, this is something we are going to continually be working on. Because obviously communication is never going to be perfect and there's always going to be a different situation or a new situation, but please trust that the safety of your kids is absolutely the most important thing to us. On your way out, I would love it if you would make sure you check your Power School if you did not get our communication last week or had some snafus, because we want to look at those systems. And I'd like to thank Travis and Julie and Jamie for their time tonight. They are our experts.